My name is Aaron Fragnito. I'm one of the founders of People's Capital Group, and we're located in Somerville, New Jersey. We help people buy apartment buildings and invest in real estate here in New Jersey. So we've been doing this about 10 years, and we own a real estate syndication. I own a real estate syndication. So people pool capital together, and they get the benefits of owning real estate without having to do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. That's what we do here. And I actually do educational webinars multiple times a week. Sometimes I speak at RIAs as well, often almost every single week. So we got a big network there. And I want to team up with Rich and talk about lending tonight. Rich, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Richard Allam. I am one of the co-founders of RCA Capital. We've been running this business for almost 15 years now. We started out as brokers. Shortly after that became lenders in the non-bank, non-QM type space, and we've been growing ever since. We are pretty much nationwide with the exception of maybe 5 states. Wow. We do a lot of asset-based loan, private lending, asset-based loans, your typical fix and flips. And we also arrange financing for large deals, whether it's a multi-million-dollar construction, development, retail, office, you name it. So, yeah, special use. Mm-hmm.
Yep, go ahead. Excellent. That's why I wanted to have you on, because you're very knowledgeable of lending and different products out there. And with all the hype going on around interest rates rising in the lending environment, this is a very hot topic right now.
Yeah.
In addition to that, a lot of people, I think, are curious, like, how do people get multi-million-dollar mortgages, if they don't necessarily qualify with their own cash? If I get a $5 million loan for a building, I don't need to show $5 million in the bank. I mean, that wouldn't really make sense. And how do people get that? So I'm going to ask you a few questions tonight. Rich and I both have some questions we send each other that are going to kind of explain a lot of the things we're trying to figure out here. How do investors get big scale mortgages? What are banks looking for when they're underwriting borrowers? And of course, how do we achieve the best terms for mortgages and make sure we're getting the best leverage for our dollar as real estate investors? And also in this, the questions you're going to ask me are going to be more around, buying and borrowing in this environment. Why am I buying more real estate now? How am I getting mortgages? What are the terms coming in at? And is it even a smart time to be buying real estate with the interest rates going up, which is a very fair question. So we'll talk about that in the second half of the presentation. Rich will answer the questions I'll ask him for the first 20 minutes or so. I think we'll open up for questions to the group here, and we have a lot of people jumping on. We're also live on Facebook, which is great. So if you have questions as we go along, I really encourage them. Please type them in the Q&A. Okay, you could find the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom tab there. And so just type those questions in the Q&A, and Rich, let's answer them when we're done with your set of questions. Okay, so we can kind of get through those, and then you can answer all the questions you have, and then you can ask me my questions, and I'll answer all the questions that people have written about that.
Yeah,
so we don't stop every 2 minutes or something.
So it's nice that we're both on the different side of the aisle here, so to speak. But that's good. Different perspective, different point of views. And supposedly the market's supposed to slow down, right, with inflation and high interest rates. But I'm not really seeing much of that on my end.
Still waiting for those prices to come down. I'm going to shave once they come down here. I'm still waiting. I think I'm going to end up looking like Santa Claus pretty soon. No, it's all good. You're absolutely right. And I definitely will talk about that. And, we'll look into my crystal ball and see when those prices are going to come down, and that'll be worth absolutely $0, that advice. So, that'll be great. And whenever someone tells you they know what's going to happen in the future, that's worth $0. So, anyway, let's get started on your questions here. Okay. And, we'll break right into it tonight. So here's a softball for you. If you were a politician, this would be pretty easy to start here. And what is an asset-based loan? Richard, what is an asset-based loan?
Yeah, sure. I mean, asset-based lending has been around for quite a while. It's actually it's been one of the fastest growing, non-bank lenders have been the fastest growing the last, I would say, 10 years, in the industry. That's because more and more people or more investors are finding out about asset-based lending. Your typical individual, your typical investor would go to their local bank that they bank with, whether it's, Chase, Bank of America, you name it. They want to buy an investment property, commercial property, or really a property for their business, to house their business. The bank's going to ask for financials, right? Tax returns and whatnot. And next thing you know, they're going to, start to run into trouble. Well, your financials, you're showing losses, how can we extend credit? So with asset-based lending, for the really 99% of the time, we don't look at tax returns. We don't look at financials. We focus mainly on the assets itself, the collateral itself, which is the real estate. Does it perform? Does it have a potential to perform? So that's really, in a nutshell, what an asset-based loan is. We look to see that there's cash flow on the property. If there is no cash flow, then what's the potential cash flow? Maybe it's a property that needs to be rehabbed, for example. So it could be rented. So that's really mainly the gist of an asset-based loan.
Sure, absolutely. It's based on the performance of the asset or potential performance of the asset, and that could be good for borrowers because you really want the asset to speak for itself and not necessarily just your finances and your assets yourself. Okay, great. So number 2 here, what would you consider who would be considered an asset-based lender?
So your typical asset-based lender, the word hard money lenders are out there. So a hard money lender is actually an asset-based lender where they really don't look at, a borrower's financials. Some hard money lenders actually don't care about credit score. They obviously don't want a foreclosure that's an open foreclosure or a short sale on a borrower's credit. So those are your typical asset-based lenders. They could be private individuals, they could be institutions or whatnot. We are private lenders. We're not hard money lenders per se, although the rates, the way they're going right now, a conventional loan is starting to look like a hard money loan,
Right.
With creeping up to double digits. So, most private asset-based lenders are really private non-bank lenders. We're not brick and mortar, so you don't bank with us. We're not like a savings and loan. We strictly do transactions, and in most cases, those loans are sold off to the secondary market. In most cases, So RCA Capital, again, we've been around for a while. We are nationwide. There's plenty of other lenders out there as well in our space. Interestingly enough, conventional banks started to kind of, open up a product for asset-based lending, but they're mostly business related. So they're instead of real estate, they're looking at the business assets, equipment, inventory, and whatnot. So I'm starting to see banks, really slowly creeping into that space.
Are Fannie and Freddie Mae asset-based lenders?
Interestingly enough, so they could fall under asset-based lending because what people don't realize when they think of Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or FHA even, they think of 1 to 4 unit residential. I'm buying a house, the bank's going to sell the note, it's going to become mortgage-backed security, and it's going to go through the secondary market, Fannie, Freddie, and whatnot. But what they don't realize, a lot of investors or borrowers, they don't realize that actually Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are in a business of doing commercial loans. So we call those agency loans, and those loans as well are somewhat asset-based as well because no financials are required. So you don't submit tax returns. You don't have to approve income employment. Again, as a typical asset-based lender, those kind of loans we call agency loans.
Mhm.
They look at strictly the asset. So they look at the performance of the asset. They want to see an operating history
Mhm.
that's unaudited, really,
Mhm.
on the asset itself.
Yeah.
So a lot of apartment loans actually are done by are actually sold to Fannie or Freddie,
Mhm.
as a secondary market, and even FHA as well. Um, so also, um, like I said, most apartment loans. Now, interestingly enough, we could also submit mixed use properties with them as well.
Sure.
Really, they don't want to see the commercial end, the
Mhm.
commercial piece exceed 35-40% maximum of the total rentable
Mhm.
space. So it's
Uh-huh.
not just apartment buildings,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Very good. All right. Let me get I threw that one in there myself. Why would a borrower use an asset-based loan instead of a conventional commercial loan?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and that's the reason why lenders like us have been growing, and a lot of loans have been secured by us.
Mhm.
Because you have your typical borrower, like I said, who is an investment. Really, most of them are self-employed.
Right.
Whether you're a full-time investor or you're a business owner, entrepreneur. The reality of it is that most of financial statements, their tax returns aren't really you know reflecting the way they're supposed to,
Mm.
especially if you're a real estate owner. We have so much write-offs in terms of depreciation and
Yeah.
whatnot and tax credits that the bottom line is not strong, and a lot of banks look at that and look at the performance. So they look at the Schedule E and they say, well, you have, $50,000 in repairs, and they spread that over 2 years, and they use that to basically debt service the property, and then you end up not qualifying. You probably have to end up putting 50% down in order to get a loan to qualify that way.
Mhm.
So, hence, with asset-based lenders, we understand that, and we look at the performance of the property. What kind of income does it generate? What are expenses, mainly the taxes, insurance, what kind of operating expense, is there, something, we look at something reasonable, and then we compare it with the area and similar properties. We do look at debt service ratio. However, we don't look at it through the lens of a financial, like a tax returns.
Mm.
We
Mhm.
look at it from a simple operating statement that the borrower would provide to us.
Okay. Sure.
And we so in most cases our debt service requirement is much easier that way. So it's easier to qualify
Right. Right.
with an asset-based loan overall.
Are the fees any different?
Actually, no, not really. I mean, if you're talking about a hard money loan,
Yeah,
yeah, it
of
could be
course.
very expensive.
Right.
I know hard money lenders that would lend on anything, a chicken farm, they'll lend on it, I mean, you're paying 16-15% interest, 17,
Right.
percent interest, but they'll lend on practically anything,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in some cases, interestingly enough, our long-term rental loans, they tend
Mhm.
to be cheaper to close.
Mhm.
When you go to a typical bank, let's say you're buying an apartment building or a mixed-use building,
Mhm.
when you go to a conventional bank, people don't realize or eventually realize that you're actually paying the lender fees, the attorney fees for the lender. That could be, anywhere from $2,500 to $4,500 for the bank's attorney,
Oh, I pay more than that. Oh yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. On our side, that fee is not there. We
Mhm.
don't charge you for our legal fees.
Yeah.
Appraisals could be expensive.
Mhm.
I've seen most of our appraisals on I would say over $1 million loans
Mhm.
come in cheaper.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of internal fees that banks charge, we don't.
Right. Right.
But what's really also interesting and attracts a lot of these investors is we could offer a 30-year fixed rate term.
Oh, wow.
You're not going to see that with a conventional bank. I mean, that's rare. If there are conventional banks out there that would do a 30-year amortization,
Right.
but it's not fully amortized and it's not fixed throughout the whole term. So we could offer security in terms of giving you a 30-year fixed loan. You're going to have that 5-year prepayment penalty in the beginning,
Yeah.
and it goes away, and then
Sure.
you're free to basically sell the property, refinance, or do what you need to do without worrying about that.
Mm-hmm. And for our listeners that aren't aware of what a 30-year fixed rate loan is, what does that mean exactly?
So basically, whatever rate we give you,
Mm-hmm.
that rate doesn't change throughout the whole term of the loan.
Mm.
Okay. So a typical conventional, commercial bank is going to give you a loan. Technically, it's a 5-year balloon.
Mm-hmm.
Where the rate's fixed for 5 years, you have your prepayment penalty, and then after 5-year balloons, which means that you have to either refinance or repay the loan.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, it could be an adjustment period after 5 years where the rate adjusts, and then it becomes fixed again for 5 years. So there's a couple of different, terms out there, but you're not going to get a 30-year fixed term.
Now, is that new, or did you offer that a year ago when rates were at 3.5?
We've always offered that.
Mm.
That's always been available on our long-term rentals, whether you're buying a single-family home, multifamily home, a commercial property, or even a mechanic shop.
Right.
For yourself. If you're a mechanic, you're buying a mechanic shop, which is a deal that I'm entertaining right now.
That's why you're pulling your hair out, man.
It's a nice deal. It's $1 million, close to a $2 million purchase. It's a nice location.
Okay.
It's a good deal. And the borrower actually has 2 other mechanic shops, does pretty good. But again, when we looked at the tax returns,
So, some small business owners like, what tax returns?
Yeah.
Like, oh God.
So going the conventional route or even SBA is just
Forget it. Oh, SBA is even hard to get. SBA, they need your firstborn. I've tried to get SBA loans before. I found them so expensive and difficult and red tape. They're like, all right, you got to pay all these fees up front, and then we'll get back to you in 90 days. And chances are you're not going to be approved.
It's a tough
do that.
I need to qualify for.
Yeah,
you'd have to prepare a business plan and projection, and most people don't know how to prepare or what a business plan entails.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, I found there was, with SBA loans, if you don't fit in that box, you don't fit in the box. Period. In the story. So that was tough. But well, that's okay. That's great. Let me move on to your next question. You're 30-year fixed. Well, here's the thing: if you get a 30-year fixed, it's a higher rate, kind of off the bat. But if you locked it in at a really low term time, a low rate time, you could do very well with it still, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you have the security and peace of mind. If you do a conventional loan, where it's fixed for 5 years and then it adjusts, then in this environment, the rate's going to probably go up. So if you have 2 years left on that conventional loan, or a year left, or it's due now, when it adjusts, it's only going to go up higher. With us, you start with a little higher, higher loan than a conventional loan, but a higher rate, than a conventional loan. But you have a peace of mind that rate is not going to change, and then you're gonna have the security of having counting on a certain cash flow, instead of worrying about when the rate adjusts, what's my cash flow going to look like.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. What are the different types of loans that are asset-based and non-recourse?
Yeah. So our loans, we're generally full PG. In other words, a personal guarantee. So we have full recourse. We require a personal guarantee from all of our borrowers. Okay. We do rather, and in most cases, we only lend to entities. So we don't lend to an individual. It's got to be an entity. Generally, it would be an LLC in real estate, and it would be a personal guarantee. What's interesting about the agency loans that we do in the CMBS loans, commercial mortgage-backed security loans,
Mm-hmm.
those are generally always non-recourse. There's no
Mm.
personal guarantee. So that's, very different than a conventional bank. Your conventional commercial bank is going to want full personal guarantee.
Right.
In some cases, if they're not really comfortable with the deal, they may take a second lien on another property that you own.
Okay.
But with agency loans or CMBS, it's really typically a non-recourse, which is nice. You don't have to personally guarantee the lien, the collateral. And if you, God forbid, you foreclose, you hand the keys over and you walk away. You don't have to worry about the lender coming after other assets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and that's another part of an agency loan or a securitized loan that investors love.
Right. Right. And what's interesting, I always found about PGs is the bigger the loan gets, the less likely you are to be requested to personally guarantee the loan. Because as they say, if you owe the bank $1 million, it's your problem. If you own $10 million, it's their problem.
Well, yeah, because once you start to get into these large loans, I'm not talking middle market. I'm talking, 50 million, 100 million. It's a lot of it is syndication, like you do. So, you may have, 20 people involved in this deal. You're not going to get PGs from everybody.
Sure.
So generally those deals, we tend to take them to, like I say, agency or CMBS or life companies where there's no personal guarantee, there's non-recourse.
Mm-hmm.
We just underwrite the deal itself,
Mm-hmm.
and that's taking title to that.
Right. Right. No, that's really interesting. I really appreciate that explanation. And it's interesting. We're in the kind of the lower to mid market amount there, and we do end up PGing mortgages. We also get options, right? The bank will say, if you PG it, we'll do a lower rate, or maybe we'll give you better terms. If you don't PG it, we'll give you less attractive terms. So Seth and I would say, well, listen, our job is to make sure our investors are getting the best investment possible, to make sure that they don't have to PG the loan. That's definite. And also to make sure this asset is taken on in the wisest, most profitable way for our investors. So if that means us PGing the loan so we get better terms and better cash flow and better profit to our investors, then we actually do it, and maybe on a personal level, that's not the smartest thing personally for me to do, but we also own a lot of assets. And honestly, whether I PG a loan or not, I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to work my butt off and do everything I need to do and take money out of my personal account before I ask any other investors if there's any shortcomings in cash or overages in construction or things like that. So, at the end of the day, the PG, it's important, from a kind of estate planning perspective or something like that. It's not BPGing loans. You do want to eventually get out of having to do that. But I've seen, lenders kind of give us options, and we tend to go with the PG option because it's better for our investors, and that's where we need to make our decision based on.
Yeah. And with what's also with agency loans, you're going to have the higher leverage, so you could go up to 80% LTV.
That's cool.
Potentially put 20% down, and then we could with CMB, with commercial mortgage-backed securities, you could do a capital stack where you could get a preferred equity piece in there. You could a mezzanine piece in there, so the developer or the borrower ends up putting 10% down.
Yep.
But you've been going strong. You've been doing well, good returns, and with the rising interest rate, you guys are still going strong and investing.
Yeah, right now we're buying a nice building in Bayonne, and we got about a 5.9 rate on that, and we are putting down about 35%. The rents are very low, which is the types of real estate we like to buy with value add. But yeah, I'll dig into that when we turn the camera on me, which we'll do in a few minutes here. I have a couple more questions for you, and then we'll wrap up your part here. This will be an easier one. Mainly focus. What is the DSCR, debt service coverage ratio? What is that?
So that's really the key word. Debt service coverage ratio. So whether you're doing a conventional loan, commercial loan, that is, or a private asset-based loan, we look at debt service. We want to make sure that the property debt service. So basically, on the residential side, if someone buying a home, most people heard the term DTI, debt to income ratio. Basically, how much income you're bringing in a month or a year versus how much is your expenses are. There's two ratios they look at. One is your mortgage payment, your principal and second insurance, and the other one is that along with your other reoccurring monthly debt, credit cards, car payments, and so forth. On the commercial side, we don't really look at DTIs. We look at debt service ratios. We look at what is coming in terms of income, and we take that, divided by your debt service, which is your mortgage payments, principal and interest, and taxes and insurance, and then you end up getting a ratio. Typically, you want that ratio to be no less than 1.25%.
Right.
And that is really what, gives the stamp of approval for an underwriter if they achieve a 1.25% ratio. Typically speaking. Now, with us, we could go as low as 1.1%. We've done it at par, 1%, where the same amount of income coming in, the rental, the same amount of expenses is going out. So you're not making any money. So we've gotten down that far. And interestingly enough, agency loans, you could even go down to 1.2. So that's another reason why a lot of these borrowers would come to us, because, in maybe a case like yours where you're buying a property with a rent so low, right? It doesn't debt service. You have to put more money down to reach the 1.25 debt service. Exactly. But with us, you'd have to put less money down, because we could even do it at 1.1 or 1.0 debt service.
Wow. Yeah, we're at about a 1.2 with the bank we're at, which is pretty much as low as they'll let you go right now that I'm seeing. I think the DSCRs, the debt service coverage ratios, when lending terms restrict a little bit, when they get a little tougher, they tend to increase those debt service coverage ratios. You're not still doing 1.1s, are you?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, all right. Yeah. RCA Capital. Wow. That's why hair left.
You know what? Across the river, and in the city, you go into the Bronx or whatnot, Brooklyn. There's heavily rent controlled, so you're going to get these. These buildings that are expensive, and the rents haven't caught up yet.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, with that crazy rent control in the city, that's why we don't buy in New York City. It's out of control. It's so tenant friendly. It's so biased towards landlords, and it just it doesn't make sense. I mean, you're basically putting down 50% on any type of property you're trying to buy in Brooklyn or something. So good luck with that.
Yeah.
All right. So last question here for you. Does the experience of the borrower factor in as part of the approval process with the lender?
It does, actually. So for example, not necessarily our long-term rentals, or if you're buying a multifamily, or you're buying an office building or something, or your own commercial space for your own business. Not so much with that, but if you're a typical investor, such as you do construction loans, ground up construction, you do fix and flip loans, any kind of bridge lending, it helps to have experience, because that allows us to really extend more credit to you. So the leverage changes, it improves, even the rate improves, because those types of loans, those short-term loans, are much more riskier. So if someone says to me, I'm going to buy a property, a 3-family home, as a rental, I mean, the risk there is as long as the cash flows, obviously, the risk is very low compared to if someone says to me, I'm going to buy a single family or a 2-family, fix it and sell it. I'd want to know if this individual knows what they're doing. Do you have any experience? Have you done this before? Well, if you haven't, we could still extend credit, but if you do, it just makes it a little easier for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And the final question I have here for you is what documents are needed from a borrower?
Yeah, really much less documents. It's referred to as no doc loan, but there's no such thing as no doc loan, right? I
I know,
mean,
right? That's kind of a
if
clickbait, honestly.
yeah, I mean, if you provide your driver's license as ID, it's no longer a no doc loan, right? So we require your typical identification. We'd like to see, at least a driver's license, a photo ID, and one non-photo ID. So two forms of ID. Again, we lend to companies. So in the case of an LLC, would like to see the LLC docs. You have certificate of formation, operating agreement, your EIN letter or tax ID. So we want to see that's in order. From the borrower, we have a simple application, really, that we have you complete or will complete with you. Run credit. We do have credit requirements, and in most cases, we don't want to really go below 650. We have programs that are under that, but we're happy at 650 or above for the most part. And aside from that, we'd want to see your proof of funds. So if you're buying a property, you want to make sure that you have the funds to do it. We don't really typically source in season. So as long as you have the funds under your control, in your account or the business account, that's good enough for us. That's really it. Really, that's how you get started with us. It's much easier.
I always hated that seasoning thing for like FHA loans. You want me to just put all the cash in my checking account for like 3 to 6 months? Like, do you understand the time value of money, my friend?
Exactly.
Oh my God. If that was in the stock market, I could have lost 20% of it in the last 3 months. Come on.
I know. Well, which you probably are now if you're in the market. I know I am.
Honestly, I don't really dabble much the stock market. I got a few thousand there, but for the most part, I'm heavy into real estate, and real estate's done very well. It's still going well. I own a lot of apartment buildings. People are paying their rent, and it's so expensive to buy a home, you end up renting. So, especially when you're in a high demand market like North Jersey. So,
Sure.
yeah, values go up, values go
it's
down.
nice to have a real asset to look at. When you're in the market, what am I buying? Shares, and then you can't touch, you can't feel them, you can't see them. Real estate, it's not going anywhere.
Nah.
I mean, it's still going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And then I dabbled into the crypto space and did very poorly. And didn't really know what I was getting into, got way excited with the hype, did really well off the bat, did double down, lost everything else I put in. It was just not a good experience. And I was like, what the heck am I doing? I own millions of dollars of brick and mortar cash flowing apartment buildings. Why am I crazy about Bitcoin cryptocurrency here? I just fell into the hype, and I consider myself a savvy investor, but boy, did I fall for the hype of cryptocurrency. I really
Stick
did.
to what you know, and apartment buildings is really, it's probably a better investment than commercial because there's a lot of retail spaces to sit there vacant. Your apartments is quicker and easier to rent. I know we have some apartments that you don't miss a month. So tenant leaves, the next tenant's ready to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
All right, very good. All right, so again, our followers, listeners here, I see more people have jumped on. Very exciting. Type any questions you have in the Q&A or the chat. I don't see any questions right now. That means we're doing our job right. We're answering these questions of the consumer here. So, Rich, if you want to turn the tables on me here, you can ask me my set of questions, and I'll try my best to answer them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of, asked a little bit before, with the rising interest rates, why are you still investing in real estate, and how are you doing at this point in real estate? I mean, the rates practically doubled, right, since a year ago.
Yeah, rates have gone up. Yeah, so we're buying a building right now in Bayonne, New Jersey, about $4 million purchase price, and we have a mortgage, like I said. So we're, right now the cost of money is going up, right? So what does that mean? All right, so that means essentially we qualify for less of a mortgage amount, and that means we have to put down a larger down payment. And that's really the biggest thing that changes as rates go up. Now, it does affect, your essentially your long-term cash flow strategy, but we have a very aggressive strategy with value adds. So we're buying a property with rents 35% below market value, and it's in a very high demand market. It's 3 blocks to the water. It looks over into Manhattan. They're building a ferry so you can commute into Manhattan in 20 minutes. It's 10 minutes to a light rail station that gets you to Manhattan, and in 30 minutes, it's one of the highest demand counties in New Jersey, one of the highest demand markets in the country. So first of all, that's where I like to invest, right? There's a ton of people living, a ton of people making a lot of money who can afford to rent, who want to rent, and the demand is through the roof. So that's the first thing I like to do. But you do have to pay to play a little bit to get into those markets. You know, it's not the cheapest real estate around. But in turn, so then that's the good part. And the second part I like about the deal is that, if rents stop growing right now, right? Rents stop growing tomorrow, which they're actually not. Rents are actually continuing to grow in cities like Bayonne and Hudson County and high demand locations in New Jersey here. Then I can increase rent by 35%, increase the value of the building by even more than that, essentially, because the exponential increase in value based on the cap rate of the building, which is a whole nother presentation. But essentially, I can increase the value of that building by 45% or so over the next 3 years, ideally, as we renovate units that become vacant, lease them up for top dollar, fair market value, improve amenities, improve the building overall, make it a nicer place to live. It's already a nice, clean building, but we're going to just spruce up the units cosmetically and make them more attractive, and then lease them up for that 35% more or so. And so we're still able to force the value of the building up by 35 or 45% right off the bat in the first 3 years of ownership. If rent stops growing today, we can still do that, right? And that is what I try to buy for, value add, right? We're not just buying, sitting and waiting and hoping the market goes up. Although, honestly, that wouldn't be a terrible strategy either in the last few years, but that's not really a smart strategy. So we buy for value add. We control the asset very closely with our in-house management company. And yes, our rate is 5.9%. I have deals that it's not bad. It's not bad. We shop like hell for that. Yeah. And I have rates at 3.8%. You know, I mean, we have really good rates. I think 3.6 was our best at one point. So yeah, I mean, rates have gone up, but listen, I also used to buy 3 families in Newark, New Jersey for, $90,000 and sell them 2 weeks later for 180. I mean, there is also much better markets to buy real estate. So, you have to recognize markets come and go. If rates are like 8 or 9%, yeah, I'm going to come up with a different strategy. I'm going to get more creative. We're going to look into seller financing, different options there. I have private investors that are at 10% interest. So it starts to almost just go with them if we're into it, 2 years and we refinance them out or something like that. So, different options there, or just buy with cash, raise all the money, renovate it, and then refinance out. Our investors would laugh all the way to the bank in those scenarios. Those can be very profitable, very nice scenarios where they get like the majority of their investment back in 2 or 3 years. So, that's a structure we may start to implement as if rates go too high. But right now, prices haven't quite come down yet. Rates are starting to grow, but I feel like we are starting to snag some deals. And this one was a good deal. And quite frankly, if it was like a year ago, I don't think we would have got it, and the only reason we did get it for such a good price is the broker called us. We knew them. And this is part of what I teach on how to get deals is treat your brokers very nicely, just like you would treat your investors and your tenants and everyone you do business with, but especially your brokers, because they're going to source you the deal that's going to then allow your investors to make those returns. And he called us up and said, I got a great deal, family owned property for 40 years, great condition, rents way below market value, great location. Here's the price. And we hemmed and we hawed. We tried to get it for less, but at the end of the day, we got a great price on it. And I think, honestly, if he did put it out to the market, it never went to market, it never went on the internet, never went to any of the buyers. We snagged it right there within 24 hours. Pocket listing. That's what that's called when no one else knows about it. That's how you buy real estate. If we didn't do that, it probably would have went for another $300,000 or $400,000 more.
Sure. I'm sure, I know the area very well, and definitely good thing they didn't list it. With real estate prices expecting to drop in 2023, is it a good time to invest?
You think I give myself easier questions, right?
Yeah.
No, I like these questions because this is what people ask me. I talk to investors all day long, and the most important thing when you're talking to anyone is transparency and honesty. So, is it a good time to invest? I always say, it's always a good time to invest in real estate, but you have to invest wisely with a very proven strategy. Again, we have an in-house property management company. We're buying deals off market, pocket listings from brokers for discounted prices with inherent value add. I know I can force the value up 35, 45% on these properties. So it really has to hit the fan. Values have to drop by 50% in one of the highest demand counties in the country for me to not be afloat on this property. That's a huge market collapse. Honestly, if that happens, I'm gonna have like more worries, and I'm gonna be worried about like people breaking into my house and stealing my food at that point. So because this is one of the highest demand markets in the world, so that would mean prices in less desirable markets would be down 75%, which would be even worse than the 2008 collapse. So
correct. Yeah.
Not very many experts are saying that's going to happen right now, and quite frankly, the people that are, I think, are just trying to get clicks. I do think there's going to be a recession. The markets cycle. Markets go up, markets go down. We are overdue for a buyer's market. And as a buyer of real estate, I welcome that buyer's market. But you got to buy smart. Am I super aggressive right now? No, I'm passing on a lot. The word no has always made me more money in this business than the word yes. And I'm saying the word no a lot more right now. But I'm also seeing deals come out of the woodwork, and I'm like, should I jump on this, or price is going to get lower? And, man, I have so many times I was buying a building. I wanted it for 10 grand less or 5 grand less or 20 grand less. And I was like, I'm not going to buy it. But then I did buy it, and now it's worth like $500,000 more than I paid for it. So like, thank God I didn't throw away the deal for 10 grand at the time. Because that would have been short-sighted, So yes, you want to be very cautious right now when you're buying. You always want to be cautious when you're buying, but in this market especially.
Like you said, they keep saying, the real estate market's going to drop. Real estate market is going to drop. I've yet to see that. Have you seen commercial real estate drop?
Not really.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing less bids. Which I think in turn is allowing the property to go for perhaps lower than it would have. But, we were just looking at a deal the other day, and we were like, it works. It's got a little hair on it, like every deal, right? It's got hair on it. If it doesn't have hair, then, you just haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
We're like, it works, it works at this number. And it was like right where they were asking for the property, and we were like, it may be bid up. We could probably snag it at this price. We're just a little hesitant. It was kind of a small deal, it was 6 units. We're just not that crazy about it. But it's interesting right now. I don't know. Maybe that deal would have been bid up to wazoo, but it's just not getting bid up right now. But I'm also like, it was listed for like 780 or something. I mean, I'm not going to get it for like 680. I still have to pay 780 for the thing if I wanted it, and so it doesn't really feel like a buyer's market just yet.
Yeah. What kind of interest rates are you seeing? I know you mentioned you have 5.9 on this building, which I think is a good rate in this market. But what are you typically seeing? And I think most of your loans are really bank, right? Commercial banks.
Yeah, that was Haven Savings Bank we ended up connecting with on that. They gave us the 5.9 rate, 35% down, 54321 prepayment penalty, which for our listeners, that means you sell it in the first year of the loan, you pay 5 points of the loan amount. The second year, you pay 4 points. So ideally, you want to refinance or sell it into the fourth year or something. Sometimes there's a 90-day window you can avoid any prepayment penalty, but that's pretty common to see in a loan. So yeah, and I think honestly, my debt coverage ratio it's 1.2 they're looking for. So the building just doesn't make a lot of cash flow. It's a high demand building. The rents are low. So you just end up putting down more of these anyway. I think I'd probably end up putting down 30% if the rate was a little lower, but it wouldn't have made that big a difference. But we shop around. We shop around for our money just like we shop around for our real estate, right? And so we went to Stack Source, we went to other lenders as well, and direct bankers, brokers, the whole spectrum. And we were seeing a lot of rates in the mid sixes. That was unattractive, and we were seeing other rates even higher than that sometimes, and then a good amount of rates kind of at the 5.95 area. And but for the most part, yeah, I mean, this was a very good rate. We locked it in right away. We wired the money to the bank next day upon receiving the term sheet. So, that's another trick of the trade. Once you get what you want from a bank, lock it in real quick, just like you would with a contract on a piece of real estate. But yeah, that's where rates are right now. And who the heck knows where they'll be tomorrow, right?
Yeah, they continue to rise. What's your investment strategy? We start to see 8-9% rates.
Yeah. So let's say rates go to 9%, right? Honestly, at that point, I'm going to call up my private lenders who are simply multimillionaire investors who act as the bank and say, hey, my friend, let's start talking about, what we can do here. They tend to give us the majority of the cash necessary to buy a piece of real estate. They'll do higher leverage than most banks. They've worked with us on multiple deals for nearly a decade, some of them. So they're very comfortable with us. And these are just private individuals that have done very well for themselves. And some of them just lend to us primarily. So that's one option, private lenders, which is basically hard money. We're looking at 10% interest at one point for about 80% of the purchase price. So that's one option. Then our second option would be seller financing, right? That's an owner takes back the mortgage. They will then hold paper. They'll act as the bank, and ideally you can negotiate a pretty fair rate generally with that. Maybe instead of
quite a bit.
Yep. So for a motivated seller and a good buyer, right? I'd say, hey, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Seller, I own, over $20 million in assets. We have an in-house management company. We do very well with our historical track record. So, hey, I'm a good borrower, right? Let's work out a deal where you get a 5% interest rate on your money for 3 years, and then I'll have to do a balloon payment after that because I'll be ready to refinance then, So that's option one. Option two would be option one, I guess, would be the private lender I spoke of. Option two would be seller financing. Option three is just raising a lot more cash and buying it with a fund that we create to purchase the real estate, doing the renovations, leasing up the building for top dollar, and then refinancing to get our investors all that cash back, or the majority of it. That can be extremely lucrative for our investors. And the only challenge, of course, on our end then is you're raising a lot of dough out of the gate, and you have to, you can't leverage it. So it does limit your buying power in a sense, depending on how deep your investor pool is. And then the fourth option, I'd say, is assuming the mortgage of other sellers. Right now, this is a little trickier, but
if it's available, if it's allowed.
Yeah, and banks are people too. Banks are businesses too. So you call them up and you start to create a relationship. You show off your balance sheet, you show off your website, your track record. They say, all right, you got 115 podcast episodes. Maybe I have them on my podcast. Maybe I do a joint webinar with them. So there's lots of ways you can put a little icing on that cake and make it worth their while to do business with you and say, hey, let me assume that mortgage that's at a 3.5% interest rate from 4 years ago. And, but, maybe, we'll pay it off in the near future, something like that. I don't know. We'll put a balloon in there, but basically you're assuming the terms of the existing mortgage. Now the challenge with that is you're generally having to come up with a lot more cash because the mortgage is smaller, because it was bought for a lesser price and it's been paid down a little. But even if you can get a mortgage for like half of your purchase price and you're assuming the current existing mortgage and maybe it has a 3.5% interest rate, that's maybe better than getting 60% of the cost of the property, but paying a 9% interest rate or something, right? So that would be my fourth option, or is that my fifth option? I lost track.
Fourth, yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot of options, by the way.
I got more. We don't have enough time, man.
I mean, how do you protect your investors yourself with this recession? I know in real estate, a lot of investors make money in a recession.
Well, as Warren Buffett said, when there's blood in the streets, buy, right, or whatever the term is, or when others are, scared,
Selling. Be
greedy. Yeah, when others are greedy, be scared. Right. So I feel like we're at a time where others are scared, so I don't want to be greedy, but I want to have my buyer's hat on, and be smart right now, look for opportunities, motivated sellers in tough spots that want to just dump their real estate. So my investors are protected, first of all, by a preferred rate of return so that they get paid first on the net proceeds of the property. That could be positive net cash flow or proceeds upon the refinance. And that makes sure they're essentially, going to be getting a return on their investment before we do, and make sure that any proceeds from the property, net profit proceeds go to the investors first. So they start earning a return on their investment ASAP. Secondly, in our operating agreement, we have rules. It's a business. We have to make sure the property doesn't go into foreclosure. We have to make sure the building is properly insured. We have to make sure that we're doing our construction project properly and such, and executing on our project the right way. And if there's major problems, that are ensuing on the property, which of course has never happened, we actually forfeit our control of the asset, and then it goes to the investors and they can make the decision on what to do with the asset. So it's not just like a no holds bar. We can do whatever we want. We have, as Bob Dylan says, everyone is a boss, and my boss is over 50 people. That's who we have to answer to. So we have requirements for our projects and things like that. Now, listen, if the market goes down or rents slow down, something we can't control, yeah, of course, we're not gonna, that doesn't relieve control from us. But if something like negligence or theft or just, like the things I mentioned happen, we do forfeit control of the asset. And then, thirdly, we have, of course, the PPM in place, operating agreements, offer memorandums, a very in-depth analysis of the property, the project, the strategy. We've researched all those avenues, and the investors can dig into all this due diligence and get comfortable with the asset, which has taken us hours and hours and thousands of dollars to put together. So they can do as much digging as they like into the asset, into people's capital group, into our track record, references, things like that. And so we're an open book here. So, when someone invests, there's always risk with investing, right? Mm-hmm. If someone tells you, oh, I got a call from people, like, it's crazy. They say, like, oh, there's no risk in this investment. Like, bro, you can't even say that. You're going to go to jail if you say that. You're not allowed to say that. Every investment has risk. Risk is a number. You just have to calculate the risk. I personally feel there's less risk in owning brick and mortar, high demand apartment buildings with great value add that's managed by professionals with a good track record. It's, as far as real estate goes, that's about as least risky as you can get, really, trying to limit everything we possibly can there. We're not doing Section 8 housing in a third demand type of area, a lesser demand area. We're not doing ground up construction on beachfront properties. We're not doing crazy Class A real estate in Manhattan. We're not doing crazy Class D real estate in the middle of nowhere. We're doing middle of the road CB properties in high demand markets with very clear value add. And in my experience, that's the smartest and safest way to invest in real estate.
Sure. And I agree. Very good. Very good. There's always an opportunity, especially in a down market, so to speak. I've invested in Newark like you have, and every now and again I grab a property here and there, and I keep my eyes open. And I picked up a property recently, actually about a month ago or so, and it was a foreclosure, and I picked it up for like $340, and then got appraised for $450. And I haven't touched it yet. So they're out there. You have to find them,
Yeah, they are. Oh my gosh. And I think we'll see that. Maybe not those exact numbers again, but we'll see the deals start to come. I really feel that in the next year. I don't think it's going to be a huge window though. 2009 to 2014 was a buyer's frenzy. And you just had a lot of time to snag real estate. The only thing I regret is not buying more real estate in that time. Yeah. And I don't think it's going to be that long again. I think there's going to be about a 12 to 18 month window that perhaps has already started that buyers should take advantage of, in my opinion, at least in high demand markets.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely. Looks like we have one question, and
sure.
We kind of answered a little bit, but
you could answer this one.
Yeah. What are rates tend to range for these commercial loans? I guess these commercial loans, maybe we're talking about asset-based loans that we do. Our rates range anywhere from 7% up to 10%, depending on the type of property, credit score, leverage, our LTV, the size of the loan. So a multi-family, 3-family home purchase at 400,000 is going to have a better rate than if you're buying a strip mall, for example, at 1 million,
Yeah.
or 750.
Mhm.
So that's really typically where they fall.
Yeah,
They were
depends on
much,
the
much better a year ago, I'll tell you that
Yeah,
much.
yeah. Depends on the asset a little, right? Depends on the borrower, depending on what type of loan it is. But yeah, I saw the same thing. I mean, 5.9 was the best we could find right now. There were rates up in the sevens too. So they range. They certainly range. There's a lot of different terms on mortgages. Yeah. Why don't we finish up my questions and we'll go back to, we have 3 more questions here. So why don't we finish up your questions for me and then we'll circle back around and answer all the questions being asked. All right.
I think I covered everything now.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no problem. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, let me see. Did I have any others here? Uh, okay, yeah, we're interested in okay. Yeah, oh, you did great work. Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. All right, excellent. All right, cool. Let's circle back around to our questions here. It is almost 8 o'clock. Do you teach real estate investing, from Arun? So Arun, we do teach real estate investing, and our website, peoplescapitalgroup.com, I'll type that in here, is where we put all of our content. Now, I don't sell boot camps or coaching, or I'm not one of those guru guys. I really just help people invest in real estate. So I do have a ton of content on our website. I have probably over 20 webinars there, and I'll just send you my website here. And boy, over 100 podcast episodes, and just a lot of content up there as well. Documents you can download, like 7 red flags for passive real estate investors. I have an ebook as well. And so check that out at our website, peoplescapitalgroup.com. Again, I don't sell the coaching or the boot camps or the hoorah-rahs. I feel like, hey, at the end of the day, you can only do one thing really well in this industry. So we just help people invest in real estate. And there is a qualification process. So Arun, your next question is, are you looking for capital? And yes, absolutely. I'm always looking to team up with new investors. I love working with new investors. In fact, I love helping my current investors, but what really gives me joy in my day, it puts a smile on my face, is when I work with a new investor. Whether you're a millionaire looking to put 7 figures to work, or you're a sophisticated investor not yet accredited, we can still work with you there as long as you can meet the minimum investment amount of $30,000. So we're People's Capital Group. That means we work with people. We don't actually work with hedge funds or family offices, although, hey, if you're on the call, I'm open to work with you, but generally your terms don't work out for what we're looking to do. We work with people. So we have firefighters, teachers, lawyers, doctors, bankers, realtors, you name it. They're working with us. Homemakers, I have the whole spectrum that inherited a bunch of money, so the whole spectrum. We work with sophisticated investors and accredited investors. But if you're sophisticated, essentially means you're not accredited. You have some experience investing in real estate. You have the mental capacity to understand the risks of the investment. You don't need to live on the returns of the investment either. You have ample savings and income. So a sophisticated investor is most people that are able to, understand the investment, have some money saved, and have some income. And that opens up the door to a lot more people, where about 95% of real estate syndications only accept accredited investors because, quite frankly, accredited investors write larger checks. They're easier to raise capital faster. And the marketing you can do, you can just put out a billboard that says, hey, new deal, 17%, whatever. With a B, I can't do that. With the type of fund we have to have a conversation. So you want to go to peoplescapitalgroup.com and click the button that says qualify to invest. And what's going to happen is my staff will reach out to you, or you'll be prompted then to schedule a call with me right there. And you'll be able to schedule a call with me, Aaron Fragnito, and I'll talk to you about your investment goals, so answer your questions about how we help people invest in real estate, and see if you qualify for our fund. And if you do, then we're able to then give you access to the private offerings we have out that we're kind of discussing right now. So that's the process of getting qualified. And it's pretty straightforward, but you do have to meet one of the 2 categories. They're sophisticated or accredited. If you're not sure if you meet those categories, go to our website, peoplescapitalgroup.com, click the button to qualify to invest, and we can connect and we'll determine if you're qualified there. Okay, one more question, Anna.
Looks like Anna's asking, what is the main down payment usually? So Anna, I think that's a question for me. So a typical down payment for residential, small residential would be 20% down. That's as least as we would go. On a commercial. We would go up to 30% down payment.
Yeah, I've never seen anything less than 20% down. Now, keep in mind, you can get a mezzanine loan or, a bridge loan, also known as a bridge loan. And Rich, of course, this will give you the money to renovate the property as well. So if you're a little tight on cash and you're thinking, oh, I need money for closing costs, down payment, renovations, operating reserves, you do. But here's a little trick of the trade. Look into a mezzanine or a bridge loan, and Rich, you can help people with that, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Sure.
and that way, Rich can give you the money for the, maybe up to 80% of the purchase, of course, depending on the property, and sometimes up to 100% of the construction costs. I mean, I know the deal has to make sense. There's lots of variables, the borrower, but can people still get up to 100% of construction costs?
Yeah, a lot of our rehab loans, we tend to go up to 100% with investors who have some experience. If you have one or two on the belt, we could depend on the deal. We could push it to 100% on the rehab.
Oh.
And we could go up to 80, 85% of the, or even 90% of the purchase.
Yeah, there you go. So if you're tight on cash, but you want to get into this business as an operator, and you have a building that is producing cash flow but needs a good amount of renovation funds, the mezzanine or the bridge loan could be a good way to go. However, you're going to be looking at a higher interest rate and more expensive closing costs. Is that right, Rich?
Definitely, yeah.
Pay to play, as they say. Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So Rich, how can people get in touch with you?
I guess they could just go rcacapital.com, rca-capital.com, and you could give us a call, ask for me, or you could shoot us an email at info@rca-capital.com. Ask for me, and I'll be happy to talk to anybody.
Okay, great. You know what I'm going to do, Rich? I'm going to put my website in the chat here. Okay. And why don't you do the same so people can check us out there? It's capitalgroup.com, because I know I wouldn't be able to remember that tomorrow. So there's my website, www.peoplescapitalgroup.com. Okay. And I'll also put my email there as well, because sometimes people just want to get their questions answered. And the easiest way to do that is to shoot me an email. So we're an open book here, People's Capital Group, and we've been helping people invest for the last 10 years. So if you want to learn more about that, there's my website, there's my email. Rich, maybe throw your email up there if you'd like as well. If people could shoot you an email, it might be the best way also to get right in touch with you there. But no, this has been a very good event. I've really enjoyed this, and it seems like our listeners have enjoyed it as well. And Rich, there's one more question for you from Anna. Do you do all states?
I do most states, Anna. There's probably some states in the Midwest that we don't do. Well, there is. So there's probably about maybe 4 to 5 states we don't do.
Okay.
But, yeah, most states we do, yes.
Great. Yeah, the best thing to do is get in touch with Rich there. He's got his email address there, and I'll leave this running for a few more minutes after we check off as well, so all the viewers can take a look at our information there and get in touch with us. But no, it's been great, Rich. I've learned a number of things as well listening to you this evening. And, I know it's always tough for us business owners to go from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yes.
But that's why they make
so no emails or calls tonight, guys and girls.
Yeah, Rich has to go home and take a break. All right. But tomorrow, blow up that email. All right. Yes. First thing in the morning. Or the best thing about email is you can email them now and you can get to it tomorrow. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Definitely. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. We had a great turnout, a lot of people on this topic, very exciting topic. So I'm going to put out the recording on our website, peoplescapitalgroup.com, but it's not going to be up there probably for a little bit of time. I'm also going to most likely email out this recording, and I believe Zoom automatically emails it out as well. So keep an eye out for that if you miss something here. But you can always go to our website, peoplescapitalgroup.com, and just get tons of more content like this on our website. And of course, Rich's site there to learn about lending, borrowing and lending. And it's a great way to start building your money, leveraging your capital. Maybe you want to do it yourself as an operator. Maybe you want to invest passively with a company like People's Capital Group. So there's no right or wrong answer. I have people that do it both ways. And really, that's the best thing to do, is not put all your eggs in one basket, but diversify over a number of different investment strategies, and just make sure you've done your due diligence, and the track record of the group you're investing with should speak for itself. So check us out at peoplescapitalgroup.com, and check Rich out at rca-capital.com. And Rich, thanks a lot for coming on tonight.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me, Aaron. It's been great.
Definitely. All right, my friend. I'll leave this running for a little bit, but I'm going to check out here, and you have a good evening. All right.
Yep. Good night, everyone.